Hello, hello, Birdie here, and we are doing our March Joy Box. It is Saturday morning and the sun is shining. I'm so excited for spring, guys. So I hope you all are doing well whenever you get a chance to watch this, and you're finding time to get creative. So let's get started. I don't have my insert here, but I always love to start with the insert, so you should have gotten an insert in your box. Just going over where you can find information. There's a picture of the Joy Box. There's the links for the tutorials for the member login on our website. And there's also a link to the Facebook group and my email. Remember, if you have any issues or questions or concerns or whatever that might be, email is the best way to get a hold of me. So at any time, please feel free to shoot me an email. And then it talks about the steps to doing your Joy Box. Make sure to write yourself on the calendar. Your time for being creative is important. It is a time for you to unwind and refocus and de-stress and all of the great stuff that comes with spending just even an hour to an hour and a half kind of clearing your mental mind while you focus on being creative. Very helpful, very healthy for you. Make sure to write yourself on the calendar and let people know in your household that that's the time. You know, you do not need me. Put the do not disturb sign on, right? Get your box, open it, inspect it. Even if you're not going to do the box right away, let me know if anything arrives missing, broken, maybe the paint has exploded, whatever that might be. And we will get you a replacement out right away so that when you are ready to craft, you have everything you need at no cost to you. So just shoot me an email if anything is off. And then when you have your crafting day, you can watch the tutorial. You must be watching it somewhere, right? In our Facebook group or on our website, and then share a picture when you are finished. We'd love to see your finished product. We inspire one another with the different ways that we go about it, maybe the different colors, maybe we decided to use a different technique, and it all inspires each other to think outside the box and try something new. So inspire each other, share in the group. We love seeing your finished product. So all right, so this month's box includes a surprise. We didn't post this. Well, we posted there was a surprise, but we didn't share what it was. This box is a reversible centerpiece. So on one side, you have the Happy Easter, and then we will flip it over and decorate it for the Hello Spring. Now today, I am just going to go through and paint and show you how to use the burlap and all of that on the Happy Easter, and then I'm going to leave it up to you guys on how to decorate the other side with the Hello Spring. So I'm not going to do that. I'd love to see how you guys do your Hello Spring sign. So again, make sure to share a picture, but I'm leaving that up to you. Pretty much you can just do the same thing as what you do on the Easter side as and just flip it over and do the same thing on the back side with the Hello Spring with maybe just different colors. So the technique is the same. We'll just do the one side though today to keep the video short and sweet. So we have the bunny base. You have 2 rows of eggs. So we built up the bottom so it will stand by itself. So you have the bunny or the egg base. Let me just take this off. So this is your bunny base. And then you have 2 of these, the Easter side and the spring side. So this is the full piece that will lay here. And then you have 6 eggs, 3 for each side, that will build up even more, giving this a thickness so that it will stand by itself. So you'll have the 6 individual eggs. And then you have your letter cutouts that say the happy in the small, hello, and then Easter, and then spring. And then you have your paint pots. Mine's kind of a mess right now. Let me just clear it out. Lots of colors to give you options. Paint your eggs multiple colors, paint them a single color, however you want to do it. But we give you options here. You've got your white, green, the dark brown, black, pink, blue, and then a pot for glue, which is what we'll use to put the burlap on. You'll have your super glue, the black sponge brush, the sanding block, and then you get 3 makeup sponges this month again. Because we have that back side, maybe you want to do something different. Gives you some different options there for painting all those small pieces. You also have burlap, and you have enough burlap to cover both sides if you want, or you do burlap on one side and paint on the other side. So mix it up, have fun with that, or do burlap on both sides. I think that burlap just adds so much fun texture to these bunnies. It gives them that more 3D feel, and I just am loving that finish on those wood pieces. So you have 2 pieces of burlap again to cover both sides if you want to on the bunny. And then you have, mine's cut in half. Well, actually that's just a short piece. Then you have 36 inches of the ribbon so that you can tie a little ribbon on his neck there. And I think that's it. So what you're going to need for the class is scissors to cut the burlap. You're going to need a pencil or a marker or a pen, something to trace on the burlap, masking tape for holding down our tiny pieces, baby wipes or damp rag paper towels if you want to create a stained look, and then a water cup for rinsing your brush, and obviously something to protect your surface, rags to clean up, and a blow dryer if you want to speed up the process. So I think that's it. Let's get started. So I'm going to put my spring side away. Remember, we're not going to do that today, but I'm excited to see how you guys do it. This process is the exact same on both sides. Here is the example just to show you. Oh, I haven't glued mine down yet. I don't know why, but there we go. So just check out that texture that that burlap gives. And I did end up coming in with some dark brown along the edges just to give it some dimension there. And then I just kind of took my brush and added some white areas for a highlight where it might be catching that light, giving it just even more that 3D look. I love this ribbon. And then the little banner is super cute. So here we go. Let's get started. All right, I'm going to start by taping my pieces down, especially those small letters. Your small letters came in a little wood square to help protect them, and they are in the square with a little tab. Now, some of the tabs didn't work, so you might have some of your letters just freely fall out. The small letters are delicate, so do take care. But the tabs help keep those letters in place. So if your letters aren't falling out easily, all you have to do is just give them a little wiggle and they will break free from those tabs, breaking away from that shipping block or shipping square that we put them in to help protect them. If you're having problems breaking them away, I wish I would have brought my little shipping block. Turn it over, and on the back side, you should see kind of where the letter and the block connect. There'll be a little piece that you can kind of hit with your nail, and it will help break that tab, freeing your letters to fall out of that block. If your nail doesn't work, You can use like a box cutter or an X-Acto knife and break that. Just be careful, take your time, kind of wiggling loose those letters to break away out of that box. Okay, I've got, let's see, I always put my letters on my tape as I would read them. It helps to ensure that we paint the right side and not the back side of the letter, because if we see it as we read it, it alerts us if something's off, you know, like maybe this E was backwards or something. Like I can because I can see it in that reading, right reading format, I know that that's backwards. The E isn't such a big deal, but some of these letters like the S or the A can be easily flipped over and accidentally painted the wrong side. The other thing is we did score the letters on here, but not on the banner. This can help with what side of the letter you should be painting. So if you're unsure, like say with the A, I mean, it could easily be this way or this way, right? Put it on your egg and lay it out, and you'll definitely see that, you know, the A is pointing this way, and my score mark, the actual A, should be kind of tilted that way. So if you're not sure, put it on your egg and see which way it should be placed there. Okay. Let's get everything laid out. I have my cup of coffee. The house is super quiet. Nobody's up yet. It's the perfect time to craft. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brown, my dark brown, and I ended up staining or faux staining the eggs. And the reason why is I wanted to have my burlap have kind of a dark background before I laid it down. So you don't have to do this if you wanted to have more of a lighter color burlap. Let me bring mine back. The burlap has these tiny little holes, right? So I stained my bunnies. So when you looked at the burlap, you kind of see that dark brown. And if you wanted to have more of a lighter color burlap, lighter colored eggs, you could stain it white, or you could just leave it that neutral color and it would just be the color of the burlap, because the burlap and this brown wood color pretty much match. So you can kind of see the difference here, how dark this looks. It's kind of just got that darker undertone, whereas this is just more of that brown color. And then if you wanted it to be more white or lighter, I would stain the bunnies white, and you would see that white peeking through the burlap's holes. So however you want to do it, I am going to stain mine. And I'm going to grab a baby wipe and wrap it around my finger. I dip it in that paint. So I've got just a small amount of paint here, and I'm just going to rub it on like I would any other kind of stain. This is that faux stained look that we love to use. Now most of this is going to be covered up by eggs, but I'm just taking it down all the way, ensuring I get the entire surface stained. I'm also going to stain my little banners, and then I'm going to just gently brush on that white when I get to it and create this rustic kind of chippy paint looking banner. And creating this dark background will help me achieve that. So I'm just gently using my baby wipe to create that stain on my banner as well. If you're going for a rustic look, this would be really pretty. to just leave the banner the brown and paint your letters white or the pink or the blue, which I might do. For those of you who have been with me for a while, you know I have a really hard time doing the same thing over and over. I like to mix it up. So I might just leave my banner brown, actually. Okay. And that looks really great just like that. If you wanted to forego the burlap, you can. This looks really pretty, just kind of like a chocolate stained bunny. I love that there are so many different ways that these kits can go. I love seeing how you all kind of change it up, mix the colors up, kind of do different things. It is very cool. I love it. That's the best part about these boxes. Okay, so now I need to decide color. I'm not going to do pink again. I'll probably do blue. But what I'm thinking is do I want to stain some of my eggs or stay with the white? So here's my example. Picking colors is probably the hardest part. I think I'll just stay with the white. We'll stick with that. Okay. So we're going to set this aside, let it dry for a few minutes, and then we'll come in and add the burlap. So we'll start painting our eggs. I'm going to go with blue and grab a makeup sponge. And I like to stretch my makeup sponges as far as they can go. So I'll definitely be cutting mine in half. You should have enough that you don't need to, but I like to work with that smaller surface. Okay, so I'm going to stick my makeup sponge, and you could also use, honestly, let's just use this black sponge brush because we have such a big surface. Sorry about that. Okay, I've got my black sponge brush. We're going to go into this blue. Now, wood is super porous, and it can suck up. I don't know why I'm painting the one that is going to be covered. That is silly. It can suck up that paint color or the paint super really bad, which can make it hard to paint. So it will catch and your paint might not flow very well. So if you find that you're struggling, you know, pushing that paint around and it's catching and scratching and dragging and it's not a smooth process, what you want to do is add just a little water to your brush. So get your sponge damp. You can also add a couple drops of water to your paint. So if the paint feels super thick and tacky, a couple drops there will really help you get that paint to flow and apply a lot smoother and easier. Okay, so I've got the eggs painted. You don't need to paint the eggs that are going to be covered up. Just paint the eggs that have the letters scored in. And for the score marks, you'll notice I painted right over those. What the laser did was just burned a little outline here. Those are called score marks, and it's fairly deep, so you don't have to worry about filling those holes. It takes quite a bit of paint to cover a score mark. So go ahead, paint right over those. You'll still be able to see them. So this is the first coat. I can still see that score mark, so I know where to place those letters. Don't worry about covering them up. Like I said, it takes like, I want to say 5 or 6 coats before I've covered up a score mark. And I tried to do it on purpose. I was testing it, and yeah, it takes a lot. And even so, then you can still kind of see those ghost marks. Okay, so I'm going to paint my other 3 eggs white, but I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm going to try and create this really light blue color, almost white. So I've got just a small amount of blue on my brush. I'm going to just go right into my white with that, and it's just going to blend as I brush that color on. It's going to be a super, super light blue. And you probably can't even tell on screen. The white always kind of washes out. And the more I dip my brush into that white, the less blue it's going to be, even so, you know, because I'm adding more white and losing that blue with every brush stroke. But I think that will be really pretty to just have some super light blue eggs with my darker eggs. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to set my brush aside. I'm not going to wash it quite yet because I'm going to come back and put a second coat on these. When you're painting your pieces, make sure that you're using light coats. Multiple light coats are better than heavy coats, because heavy coats, you know, you're globbing that paint on. You're not getting a nice smooth finish. And it just takes so much longer because the top dries and it almost seals those bottom pieces, and it takes forever for that bottom or that sandwich layer to dry, if that makes sense. So light coats dry super fast, the acrylic paint, and then you can go on and add a second coat almost by the time you get through painting everything. Okay, so I did black before, but I think I'm going to do brown on my Easter letters. So I'm going to take my baby wipe and rub that brown, creating that faux stain on my letters. If you're going with the black, grab that makeup sponge and use that, or any other color. Use your makeup sponge. And I think I'm going to do white on the happy. We'll see how it looks. A lot of times I don't like to mix the colors on my letters, but we'll see. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. It kind of just depends on the background. Mixing colors on your letters, depending on your project, can make your project hard to read. But again, it just all depends on the background too. Okay, so I love that. Then I'm going to take my cut in half makeup sponge. We're using the large end to put our color down. And we hold it by the skinny end and we're just tapping that color. So when you go to load your brush, if I dip it in the paint, and let's see if I can get a little bit of close up. Let's see if that'll give it a second to focus. There we go. So what's happening here is there's a ton of paint right there, and you can see that's globbed on. If I were to just go and start dabbing that on right now, paint would fall off the edges and get in all those tiny cracks and crevices. When I'm painting my letters, I don't like to paint the edges. And actually, I don't like painting the edges of any of my projects. I like the dark cut look. I think it helps the project pieces stand out, and painting the edges is a lot of work, and I don't want to do that. If you want to paint your edges, you're more than welcome to. It will take 3 to 4 coats to get a nice smooth finish on those edges. So I like to just paint the top surface and keep my edges nice and clean. So to do that, I want to make sure that my makeup sponge doesn't have very much paint on it. So I dipped it in. It's still got that paint globbed on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to squeegee it off the side, and then I'm going to tap it on my tray here. So now it almost looks like I have no paint on there, but I know I have a very thin layer of paint. So now I'm ready to tap with a medium pressure. Don't press too hard, otherwise that paint will get pushed off the edge. So we really just want to tap it medium to light pressure, and just keep going over the area. And the key here is, again, light coats. So when you're painting with lighter colors like a white or a pink or that light blue, it is going to take a few coats. Your first coat is going to look super splotchy. You might see some of that wood still, and it might look kind of rough. Let's see if I can bring that up. It's not going to show you. I'm not going to get a good look at that. Anyways, it's splotchy looking. It's not super white, bright. So I'm going to let it sit and dry, and we'll come back and put a second coat on there. So while that was all happening, my blue dried. Okay, so I'm ready for a second coat on that. Now, before I go on, though, I do want to mention that wood is super porous. And it's wood, and wood and water, wood and paint, any wood and liquid really don't mix. And so when you get your piece, it should be, it has a sanded, smooth surface. But once we paint it, sometimes depending on how the wood was manufactured and a whole bunch of other factors can make the wood feel rough after we paint it. So when I put my first coat down, I always rub my hand over it and see how it feels. If it feels rough, what that means is when I applied the paint, the wood's fibers started to stand up. So they're laying flat. We add water, liquid, paint, whatever it might be, and those fibers start to expand. It's a thing that happens with wood, all wood. There's nothing we can do, nothing you did wrong, but to help fix that, you have a little sanding block. So if you're feeling your pieces and you're like, they just feel really rough, take your sanding block before you put your second coat on and just lightly sand those fibers down. A medium to a soft pressure is all you need. You don't need to sand it so hard that you remove a bunch of paint. Now, some of the paint will get removed, but you shouldn't see that wood peeking through. You can see it just looks like normal, right? And so I'm going to go through and do that because it is feeling a little rough. Okay. And these are still a little wet, so I'm going to let those sit for a minute. And now we're ready for our second coat. So I've got my black sponge brush. And we'll just put that second coat down here. When you're brushing your pieces to really help keep those edges nice and dark and paint free, I paint from the middle out. So I start my brush stroke in the middle somewhere and paint out towards the edge. That helps keep the paint off my edges and gives me that clean, dark look that I'm after. You can see there. If you go this way, if you start from the outside, your paintbrush is gonna, you know, it's almost acting like a squeegee. It's gonna collect that paint on your edge. So start from the center and work your way out. Go all the way around. And sometimes that's hard to do because of the pieces or wherever that might be located. And depending on, you know, the pieces, you just have to go slow with a light pressure if you're not able to start from the center. Okay, looks great. All right, let's bring these back. And I'm going to take my sanding block. They're just a little rough as well. Sand them down a little bit. Okay. I'm going to go into that white and put a second coat down. Don't be afraid to mix your colors either. If you're wanting a lighter blue or lighter pink or green, whatever that might be, adding white to it can really help. You can also go darker with your colors by adding the brown or the black. Each one will give you different results. Adding black to a color gives it more of a gray tone or a cool tone. If you add brown to a color, it gives you more of a warm, creamy tone. So play around with it as well with your colors. And if you have paint at home, you can always incorporate that and use whatever you have on hand. Okay, so you can kind of see, actually, I'm looking at my screen here, that those do have kind of just a blue undertone to them, which I think is going to look super cool. I'll probably rustic them up. So I'm going to set these aside, let them dry. And I'm going to bring this back here and put a second coat on it real quick. And then we'll get to those burlap bunnies. Perfect. All right, so all my letters are done. And we are ready to add the burlap. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab a piece of this burlap. And I'm just going to do one side at a time. I'm going to lay my bunny out. I want to make sure to catch his little tail here. The egg goes around here. So we're just going to have a small little section of burlap there and then up through there. So I'm lining it up at the bottom here. And then I'm going to take my pencil. I know I have it somewhere. There we go. And I'm going to press down. Because the burlap has all of these holes, as you're tracing it, you can move the burlap and cause it to distort. So it's really important to hold down tight the bunny to the burlap. So the area that you're working on, you want to have your hand there so you don't move that. And it's with a pencil, it takes a couple times to go around to get a good line there. You can use a marker or a Sharpie for this. So I'm moving my pressure to where my pencil is here. I'm kind of just going over it a couple times because that burlap with all the holes can kind of be hard to trace. Just go over it a couple times with your pencil. Again, if you're using a marker, you don't really have to go over it so many times. You'll get a good line. So I'm just going up to this point and then there and stopping. You'll have a small little gap where you don't see that line. That's okay. And then I'm stopping right here at this point where this egg meets. Okay. And there we go. We've got our bunny there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my excess off the top here. And guys, you should have enough burlap that if you wanted to cover a couple of the eggs with burlap, you definitely could. That would be super cute too. But I'm going to just go straight across right here. And when you're cutting out your burlap, you want to go on the inside of that line. We don't want to see that line on our bunny. So I'm going right on the inside of that line. The other thing is we don't want it to stick out past the bunny, especially if you're going to paint the other side. So, you know, when you turn it around, you don't want burlap pieces hanging off the edge if you're going to paint the other side. Now, if you are going to burlap both sides, having that burlap kind of stick out past the bunny's edge would be okay. Now, when you go to paint yours, I suggest especially if you're going to burlap both sides, to cut your burlap for both sides before you glue any of your eggs down on one side. It will be easier to trace the bunny if it's flat. So what you're going to do for the other side is you'll just flip the bunnies around and trace them. You don't want to have one side completely finished with your eggs all glued down, and then it's kind of a pain to trace. You're not able to apply that pressure. There we go. So you've got this. We're going to do this one next, and then we're going to cut out that egg so that our eggs sit flat against our bunny base, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm going to bring back my other piece of burlap. And again, line it up along the bottom here. And using my fingers as pressure, just start tracing around. Okay, So again, if you're doing burlap on both sides, do this step, tracing your bunnies at the same time so that you have the capability to lay your bunnies flat, okay? Burlap will start to fray, so don't handle the burlap too much. I've already got some fraying happening here, but that's okay because that's kind of what burlap does, and that's what we want. We want to have that fun, textured, rustic finish to our bunnies. All right. Now, what we have to do next is we have to cut these eggs out so that our eggs will don't have this lump. And then we won't get a solid surface to glue our pieces down. So what I'm going to do is lay my burlap out where I want it. I'm going to bring my eggs back here. So I'm going to just make sure that everything lines up where I want it. Okay. We're good there. And then I'm going to bring my eggs in and lay them out. Okay. So this is about, I'm going to need to move it over just a little bit. So I'm lining it up at the top. I'm lining it at the bottom using these little rivets here to help me place it. I've got my burlap still where I want it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and trace around these eggs. Just using just a light pressure, going over it a couple times. Okay. Holding down. Now, this is where we have a really thin area where that burlap's going to be. You might even just cut the tail off and have that be a separate piece than that, which by the looks of where my burlap is, I might be doing that. Let's see where we got. Yep. So I see where my eggs are. I'm going to cut right on that line. And see how I've got just this tiny little bit holding its tail on? That's okay. Like I said, if your tail ends up being a separate piece, it's going to be fine. Don't worry if the tail gets kind of cut off. That amount of the bunny bum that we see there is so small that it is okay. And I didn't cut as much as I wanted off. I want to make sure that my eggs sit nice and flat. Okay. All right, so I'm going to just test it. I'm going to lay this out. Okay. And I'm going to make sure my eggs on there. And then this sits right there. Perfect. Okay, we're good. If you have a little bit of that jute, or excuse me, the burlap that sits underneath your eggs by the time you get it all put together, it's going to be okay. We just didn't want to have a bunch lifting those eggs up. We wanted to have some areas where it's not, that we have a good surface to glue to. All right, so now we're going to glue these together. I'm going to close up my paint here so it doesn't dry. And I'm going to get the glue out. This is just an all-purpose glue. So if you find you need more, you can use anything like a tacky glue or a Elmer's glue. Anything that dries clear. All right, so I'm going to just take a brush that I have You can use your black sponge brush. You can clean it off and use that. You can use your finger, whatever you want. We're just going to apply glue to our bunny. We want to work fast. We want to have a nice amount of glue down, not too much though. Just enough to see it. You want to make sure that it stays wet. We want to make sure those edges get enough glue on them so that we don't have our burlap fraying too much. Get down here on the little bunny tail. Okay. Perfect. All right, so then we're going to lay this down. And if, you know, you don't get the entire bunny covered in burlap, that's okay too. I got a little area up here where I've lost some around the ear. And just smooth it out. Work from inside and just go outward. And you can kind of see here where I lost some of that burlap. It started to fray because it was so thin. Our egg is going to be there, and so it's okay that it's a little bit missing. Again, that's kind of what we want. You can see it's starting to fray. I lost a little bit on the top of the ear there, and that's okay. I love how that looks. Okay, next piece. I bought these blue brushes specifically for applying glue because I was constantly grabbing my good brushes. And these are, you know, just brushes I picked up at Hobby Lobby. But the reason I grabbed them was because they had a blue handle. And it allowed me to always know that when I'm gluing something, I'm grabbing the brushes with the blue handle so I don't grab like my paint brushes, because I was constantly just ruining those. But if you don't have a second set of brushes at home, glue brushes like this, wash that black sponge brush and use that. It really, we're really not painting much else with it. And it's easily washed. Just throw it in some water until you're ready, and you're ready to paint your eggs for that next round on the back side. I should have done that. I'm so used to grabbing my blue brushes though that I didn't even think about it. Okay, I'm laying my burlap down, smoothing it out, making sure my little bunny tail here is good. And there we go. Okay, there's that. And then if you're doing the backside with burlap, you do the same thing with the backside, and I would do that now. Don't wait again till your front is all done. Can I do both in tandem, working on both sides together? Okay, I'm going to lay out my happy here and see how I like it. I might go back to the dark brown and the white. I think I'm going to love that. Okay, and then I'm going to lay these out, just laying them here to see where we're at. Okay, I think that's going to work. It doesn't look too silly from each other. So, okay. All right, the next step then is to decorate our eggs. So I'm going to add some rustic finishes to them. I'm going to grab a makeup sponge or a makeup wipe. I'm sorry. Let me start over. I'm going to grab a baby wipe and dip it in my brown. But I want to get rid of most of this, or really just offload it. So I'm taking that and just tapping it on my tray here until, you know, it's spread out and I've gotten rid of some of that. And then what I'm going to do is come and lay my finger right on the edge here and just drag that color lightly on the edge. And you can see how I get this kind of dirty, rustic finish on the edge of my egg. If you've gotten too much, let's say you do this and you're like, oh, that looks too dark, just grab another piece of your baby wipe and go back over it and soften it up. You can lift up that color if you don't let it sit. It's not something that you can look at for a while, let it dry and do it. You would have to, it has to be done kind of right away before it dries. You can kind of lift that paint up. And if you hate it, if you do a couple and you're like, I just want to have nice clean eggs, you can just let it dry and just paint right over it and start again. Add that color right back over it. Because it's kind of a soft wash color, you can repaint it fairly easy. I'm going to go along the bottom here with a little bit more than along the edge because I want to have that shadow. And I kind of work with the paint, and then I take a different piece and just wipe a little bit away. Kind of play with how that looks. Soften those edges up a little bit. Okay. So on the bottom, because eggs are rounded, what I'm doing is I'm taking my rag here, baby wipe, and I'm coming and going around. So it's a little thicker of a stained look on the edges, and it gets thinner right here. And that's going to give us that look that it is rounded. It's amazing what shadows and color can do to make a flat piece look more round. So I'm just kind of working on thickening it up along those sides there. I'm going to do the same here, adding a little more shadow kind of on those corners, and it thins out on the bottom. Okay. Love it. Okay. And then I'm just going to give this a quick little sanding here. Still feels a little rough. All right. So the last thing that I'm going to do is just add some splatters and add some shadows to my bunnies. So we can add splatters a couple different ways. I like to use an old toothbrush. Let's do the splattering first, and then we'll add some shadows to our bunnies here. You can use a paintbrush to do this, or an old toothbrush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an old toothbrush here and dip it in some water, soften the bristles. So I'm tapping that water off. It's not leaking any water. It's just soften those bristles there. And I'm going to go in and grab some brown. And then I'm going to take it and kind of push that brown to all the bristles here and remove some of it in case it's too much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my thumb and run it along those bristles. Now, when you're doing this, you want to point your toothbrush, or what you can even do this like with a old chip brush. You can do the same thing, but you want to point it to the piece that you're splattering. So you don't want to hold it flat like this, because your splatters are going to go that way, and then then you're splattering everything around you. So point it down like this when you're splattering. And if you're new to splattering paint, and I'll show you how to do it with the paintbrush here too, practice on just practice on a piece of paper, on your box that you've got. You can also use your box as a splatter, keep your box upright to help protect your surface. But we're just going to pull those bristles back, and we get these really pretty soft little splatters. And when you're using a brush, you tend to get bigger splatters, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Let me just splatter these. I love how this makes it look like almost like robin's eggs, where I think it's robin's eggs, where you have those dots. Let's see if I can bring it up. You got those really small little splatters there. Okay. Now, if you're using a brush, let's say you have just a round brush here that you're using, or even a old chip brush maybe from an old box. What you're going to want to do is get your brush wet and grab some of that brown paint. Okay. And what I do is I hold, let's just say I'm going to grab this, and I'll just tap this on my piece. Now this gives you, and can give you, more splatters. This has, you have to get a little more control with it. The more water, the more paint on your bristles, the bigger the splatters are, the smaller the splatters, right? And you just want to put your brush right above where you want those splatters to be. Okay. Again, if you want bigger splatters, add more water and more paint, and you'll get bigger spots. But that's how you do it with a brush. And again, that works with a chip brush as well. If you have an old chip brush, get a little water on here and then just tap it on something like this, and you'll get the same thing. You can also just tap it on your finger, but I feel like I can get a little more control if I tap it on another hard surface. So now we've got those splatters. I'm going to do the same thing with some white. I want to add some white splatters to it. And then I might also add some blue splatters to the white eggs. Oh, I was about ready to start tapping it, and that's not how the brush works. We'll add some white to it, and then we'll also grab some blue and add some blue to the white. And then blue out. And you can add splatters to the banner if you want. And you could add splatters to your bunny if you painted your bunny. The burlap isn't really going to show that, so unless you got some really big splatters. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside. My eggs are done, and I'm going to bring my bunny back. And what I want to do is add some distressing to the edge. So I'm going to grab my black sponge brush here and just make sure that there's no water in there. And grab some brown. And I'm going to tap it off on my tray here and get rid of most of that brown. I just want to have a small amount of brown on my brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it on at an angle and just gently drag it around the edge of my burlap. And you just want to do nice, light strokes. You want to make sure that your burlap's dry here too. It is going to aid in some of the fraying. You'll start to see maybe some of your pieces of burlap fray a little bit. But that's okay. I'm okay with that. If you don't want it to fray as much, you could add a layer of glue on top of your burlap. If you find that it's fraying a lot, your edges, you could paint a coat of the glue kind of around those edges. The glue that you get is clear drying, so it's not going to affect the color of your burlap. But right through here, when I'm brushing one way or the other, it's lifting up those strings, but it's not pulling them out. So I'm okay with them having a little bit of a soft edge. I think that looks really cool. So you can kind of see the difference. And you don't have to do this if you like just more of the soft burlap, then definitely just skip this step. There we go. I also, took my brush and went around where the eggs are. There's definitely going to be a shadow where those eggs are. And so we're creating kind of a shadow line right there. All right. I'm also going to stick my brush in some white, not washing it. It's okay if it mixes a little bit. And I'm going to tap some of that white out. I really just want to have a small amount of white. It's going to mix a little bit with that brown and create a soft brown. But then what I'm going to do is, using just the tip of this, I'm going to just bring a little bit of white where there might be a highlight. So right at the top of his hand there, right at the top of his face, maybe in that ear and in that ear. And then along his back, I'll bring in a little bit of white there. And it's very subtle and soft. Just brings in some highlights to that brown. Again, giving us just more of the, giving it a 3D illusion there. You can see it mostly here. I've got a really nice color there. I'm gonna add a little more to his ear over here. If you get too much, you can kind of just rub it in a little bit with your finger. There we go. Add a little more to his face right there. And you could even add some soft pink, either on his nose for the nose look, or in the cheek area for a rosy cheek. You could add white, more white to the tails if you wanted to have more of a white fluffy tail. The burlap is easy to paint, so have fun with that and adding lots of texture to that. Okay, so I think I've got everything painted. Now we can start gluing it up. I'm going to cover up all my paint and get that out of the way because I always tend to drop something in my paint. All right. So your kit comes with a individual super glue bottle. It should come like this, right? And I would have everything ready to glue at the same time because there's no lid for this. So as soon as it's open, it's ready to go. And if you wait too long, it can dry out. So have everything ready. And when you're ready to glue, glue all your egg pieces first and letters before you glue them on the bunny. Okay, so you're gonna have everything painted, you're gonna have all your bunny ready to go, and then we glue. Okay, both sides. So I'm gonna glue my eggs first. Let me show you how to work this. So this is individual use. The applicator, the red piece, has a piercing piece inside. So as you put your applicator on, it's going to open the bottle itself. You don't have to find a needle or a pair of scissors to open up the top there. The applicator does that for you. When you're going to open it, hold it by the seam here. Don't hold it by the bottle, because if you hold it by the bottle, you're applying pressure, and as you turn your applicator on, glue is going to come squirting out. So we don't want to apply any pressure to the bottle. We're going to hold it by the seam only. When you go to turn your applicator on the bottle, you want to hold your bottle upright. It is super glue and it is a liquid. If you hold it like this and you're turning your applicator on, glue is going to come out. Okay, upright, hold it by the seam, and then just slowly turn your applicator on. Go slow. Let me get it on there right. Go slow. You can go until you feel the pressure, right? And then just slowly turn that on, or twist it on, I should say. And you'll hear, sometimes you can even hear a little hiss. And you'll also see some bubbles come up. So I'm just going to go nice and slow. There we go. I saw the bubbles there. I'll finish applying that, and there we go. It's ready to go. Okay. Now, super glue is fast drying, so you don't have much time. Have your stuff ready to go and where you're going to place it. And again, make sure you spell Easter right. Here, I've got my eggs in the wrong spot. Okay. It's also super strong. You don't need a lot. So I'm just going to do a couple drops here and there. For this egg, I got 5 drops there, and that will be good to go. The important thing about lining up your pieces for this project is the bottom. We want this to be able to stand on its own, so it's important that your bottom is all nice and flat. All of these layers are going to aid in the piece standing by itself. So I'm going to set that off to the side and just line everything up and then press and hold for a few seconds. If you have weights to help hold it, that's helpful so you can move on to the next part. If you have clamps, you can use those. The dollar store still is carrying those crafting clamps. Let me show you what those look like. These are super helpful in projects. So you can use them to hold your pieces while you continue working. If you don't have clamps, you can use even just clothespins work, chip bags, you know, just make sure that it's not going to damage your surface. Before I found these clamps, I was using these little metal things. You can get these at the dollar store too. These work really great, although you can't get, sometimes they're tough to get around the wood, but that can help hold your piece. So you're going to glue your Easter eggs together, then you'll glue your spring eggs together, okay? And then once you're done gluing your eggs together, we can glue our letters on. So I'm going to let that sit for just a minute, and I'm going to come glue my happy on my pieces. Now we didn't score the happy and the hello in. They're small enough that we're just going to center them the best we can. It's a banner, and it's okay if it's not perfect. When you're applying glue to these little pieces, all you really need is 1 or 2, maybe 2 or 3 drops, I would say. And I only apply glue to the biggest part of the letter. I don't even try and get the parts that are super tiny because it's just going to fall off and get on my fingers. I just gently press those in place. And hopefully I don't move them. If they get stuck to your fingers, sometimes you can move those. Okay. There's our happy. I'm going to bring this back. This should be done, so I'll pull off all my clamps. And I'm going to grab my Easter and glue that on before I glue my eggs on my bunny base. Oh my gosh, I think I love the blue more than the pink, which isn't surprising. I'm surprised I even painted it pink to begin with. For those of you who are new, my favorite color is blue, so I tend to really paint everything blue. And maybe I did pink in a subconscious effort not to do the same thing over and over again. But I really love the blue. I think the green would look amazing with the burlap as well, especially having some like greenery around the bottom, the base of the centerpiece. You know, if you had something on your table, this would be really cute on a box or just a wood piece, kind of a rustic wood piece on your table with some greenery laid around it. That would be really pretty with the green. I love Easter where they use just all neutrals and green. Okay. So you're gonna glue your spring on as well. So get your eggs completed like this, and then we can glue them on the bunny. So I'm just brushing off. I have some excess burlap fibers here. Brush those off. And then I'm gonna glue my eggs on. And let's see. I'm gonna just throw some dots out here. The other thing to note is sometimes when we get our pieces of wood wet, it can warp it a little. But your super glue should help straighten everything out. You just have to be patient with it and let it do its thing and set. So if you find that your piece is kind of warped and like my egg has a little bit of a bow to it, my egg piece, I'm going to put my drops on there and then I'm going to set this here. And if I'm patient, sometimes if I don't wait long enough for my glue to set, that warp will pop that piece up. So it's important to really just let that glue do its thing. So we want to hold it, clamp it, add your weights to it if you can't hold it, but really give it time to work. And I know super glue is fast setting, but the bigger the piece, sometimes the longer it takes to really work. So I like having my workout set here and set this right on top, and that's going to really just do all the work for me. So I'm going to give that just a second, and then we'll tie our bunny bows on. Okay. So that took about 3 minutes to set up. So do be patient with your pieces. Let that glue work for you. Okay. And then see, even without the back on mine, it stands up all by itself. But once you get that back, this thing is going to be so amazing. I'll probably paint mine later today and I'll post pictures of mine as well. All right, so now we have this really pretty ribbon. And what you're going to do, this is going to be your last step. I'm just going to I'm going to measure it. So I just did a little tie, but you could do a bow tie. Maybe I'll do a bow tie this time. I'm going to just cut it in half, actually. I'm going to take my piece, so I'm not, and I'm going to gather my ends and pull it till I find that fold or center, and I'll cut it in half. Okay. And then I'm going to, the ribbon has this top flat piece and then this really pretty kind of scalloped edge. I want my top to be flat with the scallop pointing down. And so I'm going to lay my ribbon out like this. So it's wrapped around the bunny. And I want the bow to be on the end so I see it on both sides of that centerpiece. So you do have enough, though, that you could create a small little bow here and then a small little bow on the other side if you want. Kind of play around with it and see how it works. So I'm just going to give it a tie. And you could just stop right there, right, and have this hang down, cut it, and trim it. Or you can tie a bow. So I'm going to just tie a quick little bow and we'll see how that looks. I think that's cute. And then if we look at it on the other side, we just have to adjust these tails, make sure that these tails are kind of laying down. So what I'm doing is I'm just kind of pulling my tails down and lifting my loops up. But I think that looks great on both sides, right? One tail's on one side, one tail's on the other. And if your bow's kind of being a pickle, you can always just add a little dab of glue to the tail. Like let's say you want this tail to be down, if you just add a little dab of glue there and hold it, then that will help your tail stay down. However you want to do it, just kind of play around with that and how it looks on both sides. We'll do the same on the other side. There we go. How cute is that? All right, so tell me, you'll have to tell me in the comments, pink or blue? Oh my gosh, I don't know. They're both really pretty. I love the pink, but I also love the blue. Kind of a, and man, they would be cute with all the colors, right? You could add the pink, the green, and have multicolors as well. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed your Joy Box this month. Have fun. Schedule yourself time. It's important, but also give yourself grace if you're in a busy season and aren't able to get to it right away. There will be that time that comes up. So I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks so much and happy crafty. We'll talk to you later. Bye.